Welcome to the second Memorial Day recess episode of Pressers by FedNet, featuring news conferences from the U.S. Congress. On May 19th, International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons International Steering Group member Dr. Ira Helfand and Union of Concerned Scientists, Senior Research Director Dr. Laura Grego joined Massachusetts Democrats Ed Markey and Jim McGovern to critique projected costs and effectiveness of the Golden Dome missile defense system proposed by President Trump. The following material is protected by copyright.
Good morning, everyone. We're going to be releasing a report today evaluating whether the Golden Dome will actually protect us. And I'm going to speak very briefly explaining the findings in the report. Then I'm going to turn the podium over to my colleague, Dr. Laura Grego from the Union of Concerned Scientists, who will talk about the technical problems with missile defense. And they're going to yield the floor to Congressman McGovern and Senator Markey, who have both introduced material legislation in the Congress that embodies a new and different approach to national security, the one that we really need to adopt. This report was prompted by the request from President Trump to develop a missile defense program, which he calls the Golden Dome, which he says will cost $175 billion and which will be completed by the end of his term in office. We did this once before in the 1980s with Star Wars. That has cost us so far several $100 billion and has not yielded results. And so we thought it was important to look at whether this newest iteration could in fact protect the American people. We created a scenario that is a very optimistic scenario. It's a best case scenario for if the system worked really well. And what we assumed was that we build a system that can shoot down 80% incoming missiles. We also assumed that the Russians do not add a single warhead to their arsenal, nor do they take any out of storage, but they simply refocus, redeploy the weapons which they already have in the field, targeting them on American cities. And what we found is that even with an 80% effective system, over 300 warheads would get through to cities in the United States, that the Russians would be able to successfully target the 132 largest population centers in the United States with a 95% assurance of destroying any one of those targets. And we found further that in those 132 population centers, there are 75 million Americans who will be living in the areas which are completely destroyed in the attack. But the death toll would extend far beyond those who are incinerated in the first moments of this attack, because the entire economic infrastructure on which our country depends would be destroyed by this attack or massively disrupted. There'd be no food distribution system, there'd be no law and order, there'd be no internet, there'd be no web, there'd be no electric grid. And in the months following, huge numbers of additional Americans, tens of millions, would also die. The effects would also extend globally, because these fires that are started by this nuclear attack would put about 25 million tons of soot in the upper atmosphere, blocking out the sun, dropping temperatures across the planet, and creating a global famine that would kill something on the order of 1.4 billion people. So we need to understand that this system, which the American Enterprise Institute has estimated would cost $3.6 trillion, will not provide meaningful defense. It will divert enormous resources from things that are more important and useful for the U.S. to be spending the money on. And furthermore, and perhaps most damagingly, it will interfere with other attempts to limit the danger of nuclear war by making it almost impossible to reach good agreements with the Russians, the Chinese, and the other nuclear weapon states to eliminate their arsenals. So let me yield the floor to Laura Grego from the Union of Concerned Scientists.
Thank you so much. For as long as long-range nuclear-armed ballistic missiles have existed, strategists have pursued an attractive idea that you might be able to build a shield effective enough to reduce or even block a ballistic missile attack. Dr. Helfand has illuminated for us just what is at stake in a nuclear war. The very real and devastating human costs are enormous. So the appeal of a defense is clear, and the United States has spent almost 7 decades and more than $500 billion trying to make it work. But missile defense is a hard problem. What we've learned from this long process is that it is difficult technically, strategically, and organizationally, and that the technical reality has never lived up to the dream. Despite these expensive efforts, none of the systems built has demonstrated the ability to intercept even a single ICBM under the conditions expected during a nuclear attack. The ground-based mid-course defense system is the current and only homeland defense system, It's been under construction for 25 years. The pace of tests has been extremely slow, and the tests have failed about half the time, even though the tests are highly scripted and don't reflect operationally realistic conditions. A study published by the American Physical Society last year, of which I was a part, looked at the existing and planned systems to evaluate how well they would be expected to do against the types of threat that North Korea might be able to field in the next 15 years. That study concluded that due to its fragility to countermeasures, the inability to expand it readily or cost-effectively, the current mid-course intercept system cannot be expected to provide a robust or reliable capability against more than the simplest attacks by a small number of relatively unsophisticated missiles within the 15-year time horizon of the report. Now we have the Golden Dome proposal, an ambitious proposal for a comprehensive layered defense with ground, sea, and space-based elements. It's supposed to protect the United States and its allies and deployed forces against attacks by ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, hypersonic glide vehicles, aircraft, basically anything at any time from anywhere by any adversary, including peer adversaries. Notably, that means the Golden Dome mandates defending from Russian and Chinese arsenals, much larger and more sophisticated than the North Korean one. Bipartisan consensus for the last 25 years has been not to try to build systems to defend against Russia and China, recognizing that to do so is technically infeasible, economically ruinous, and strategically very unwise. The newest and most controversial part of the Golden Dome proposal is space-based missile defense. Such defenses have been proposed periodically over the years, famously in 1983 as Reagan's Star Wars program, and about every 10 years since then. But it has always been dismissed as impractical and expensive, and that the pursuit of such systems is destabilizing. These space-based systems are designed to catch a launching ICBM as its engines are burning, for which modern missiles is about 3 minutes or less. So you have 3 minutes to detect, track, launch, and get your interceptor to the missile. This requires being quite close to the missile's path, hundreds of miles at the most. So that means going to space. But because of orbital dynamics, you need many weapons in order to have one in place at the right time to intercept an ICBM. The numbers of interceptors in space that you need to have one in the right place depends on many specifics, some of which are under the control of the offense, some of which are under the control of the defense. The reason that you might hear many different numbers is for different because of different assumptions there. But what would it actually look like for a reasonable set of assumptions? Even for a small threat, for example, from North Korea, the number you'd need for space-based interceptors is surprisingly high. To attempt to defend the lower 48 states against a salvo of 4 solid propellant intercontinental ballistic missiles launched within a few minutes from the same place would require a constellation of 24,000 space-based interceptors, and that would only provide one interceptor to intercept each ICBM. That also assumes we don't try to defend any cities in Alaska, for which the time scale is even shorter. Additionally, adversaries could make the defense obsolete on day one by shortening the burnout speed of the missiles or adding additional missiles, offensive missiles to the salvo launch. They could deploy other technologies designed to evade, overwhelm, or directly attack the missile defense systems. To believe that they wouldn't do so is a classic example of the fallacy of the last move. We can already observe Russia investing in the development of such novel delivery systems, and we see China expanding the size and sophistication of its nuclear arsenal. They both have developed and tested anti-satellite weapons which could be used to directly disable a space-based missile defense program. Strategic ballistic missile defenses, such as those proposed as part of the Golden Dome Initiative, are often marketed as a humane alternative to deterrence, replacing the threat of retaliation by an effective defense. But in reality, there really is no prospect for building an effective missile defense system against a realistic attack by nuclear long-range missiles in the foreseeable future. And we would face the results that Dr. Halfand outlined for us. Building an effective, reliable shield against any realistic attack by nuclear-armed ICBMs is technologically infeasible for the foreseeable future, but also attempting to build one would be hugely expensive, wasting time and resources, and would accelerate the nuclear arms race. Human beings cannot coexist with nuclear weapons indefinitely, and we owe it to ourselves to focus on the strategies that can really keep us safe from them. This is not a foolish and wildly expensive Golden Dome missile defense project. It is what we need is the hard work of diplomacy, risk reduction, and nuclear disarmament. Thank you.
And very glad to welcome Senator Ed Markey to speak with us this morning as well.
Thank you, Ira. Thank you, Laura, for your great work on this issue. Thanks to Congressman Jim McGovern, IPP, NW, PSR, and back from the brink for this very important report. President Donald Trump's so-called Golden Dome is just the latest reincarnation of Ronald Reagan's Star Wars fantasy. Thousands of space-based interceptors supposedly capable of stopping a missile strike from any adversary. But in reality, the Golden Dome is fool's gold. It will make us poorer, less secure, and more isolated. It's a gold-plated boondoggle that will enrich defense contractors and ignite a new nuclear arms race. Golden Dome is a $1 trillion mistake in the making. It will be much more effective at wasting taxpayers' dollars than wasting any missiles. It is a defense contractor's dream and a taxpayer's nightmare. The potential costs are astronomical. The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office estimated last week that even a limited system against just 10 missiles would require 7,800 space-based interceptors and could cost as much as $1.2 trillion. But Trump promised much more, specifically that the system would forever end the missile threat to the American homeland. And that means defending against Russia and China, which have hundreds and hundreds of missiles. According to CBO, a system that would even approach that level would cost upwards of $3 trillion, not $1 trillion. President Trump has pitched his Golden Dome as a $185 billion project. That's just the down payment on something that could cost $3 trillion. And even worse, experts say that Trump's Golden Dome would be ineffective and alarmingly easy to defeat for three main reasons. Number one, it would be vulnerable. Space-based interceptors would be sitting ducks for anti-satellite weapons. Russia and China already have weapons they could use to attack space-based interceptors. Second, Moscow and Beijing could go around the Golden Dome. They are developing new systems to get around Trump's plans, like Russia's nuclear-powered cruise missile. And third, the Golden Dome could be overwhelmed. It would be no match for our adversaries who could simply build more and much cheaper missiles. If we build a system to stop 500 missiles, they will field 600. That's just the game. It's never ending. Golden Dome is really a golden sieve. In fact, Golden Dome would push Russia and China to expand their arsenals, reject arms control treaties, and plunge the world into a terrifying new arms race. So instead of making America safer, we will be inviting a catastrophe. We need arms control, not an arms race. We need to sit down with the Russians and the Chinese to just stop this before it spins completely and totally out of control, endangering the American people. We don't have trillions of dollars to waste on a system that is not going to work, is not going to protect the American people. We should be talking about restoring the $1 trillion that Donald Trump cut from Medicaid. We should be talking about restoring the $300 billion that Donald Trump cut from the Affordable Care Act. We should be talking about restoring the funding for education, for environmental justice programs, for all of those programs that actually do provide security for families in their own homes, where they live, for their children. That's what this debate is all about. It's about ensuring that we guarantee that we really do provide the protections which the American families want. When Donald Trump says that he never thinks about the American families and the pressure that they're under, well, that's what this debate's going to be all about. And we're more than willing to engage him on that subject. So with that, I want to introduce my great colleague, Congressman Jim McGovern from Massachusetts.
Well, thanks, Ed, and thanks, Ira, and thanks, Laura. And I want to thank the International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War, Physicians for Social Responsibility, and Back from the Brink on your excellent report, Golden Dome or Golden Scan. Spoiler alert, it's a scam. Let's be clear what the Golden Dome is not. It's not a public works project that has been through a vigorous process of analysis, evaluation, and public policy debate. Let's be clear what Golden Dome is: a vanity project of one person, Donald Trump. We must suffer the Trump Arch, the Trump Ballroom, the Trump Battleship, and now Trump's Golden Dome. Each are the egotistical fantasies of an aging man who needs psychiatric care. That's bad enough. What's worse is that we have a docile Congress that has made it the public business using taxpayers' money to prioritize one man's narcissism. This is not how a functioning democracy, the people's democracy, is supposed to work. First, the cost. You, me, our children and grandchildren will be paying dearly for one man's ego. $100 million for the Trump Arch, $1 billion for the Ballroom, $17 billion for the Trump Battleship, and just last week, the Congressional Budget Office estimated that the Golden Dome would likely cost $1.2 trillion. Trillion with a T. And as Senator Markey said, that just may be a drop in the bucket. Second, the risk. The risk. Here is yet another nice-sounding promise to protect Americans from aerial attacks from any foe. But beware, we've been sold this snake oil before. Reagan's Star Wars was also promised a constellation of space-based interceptors that proved a folly. And so will the Golden Dome. The technical challenges of hitting a bullet with a bullet are immense. There will never be 100% confidence of hitting every single missile. I remember when the Pentagon used to claim that when an interceptor failed to hit the target in a test, that it had achieved all mission objectives. Are we going to be lied to again with the Golden Dome? There's a risk of making low Earth orbit a no-go zone. Even one strike creates space debris that can damage communications and other satellites, even the Golden Dome ones. And there's the risk of an arms race, of a further arms race. Creating layers of defense only invites other countries to build more offensive capabilities to overcome them. There's a historical fact. More arms beget more arms. Those who say this logic doesn't apply to the Golden Dome, they are lying to you. They are lying to you. There is a better way, as my colleagues and Senator Markey have said: arms control, negotiations, confidence building. In the past, we have done this with the right political will, but that is sorely lacking. The last arms control treaty with Russia expired in February. The Trump administration looked the other way. We can summon the will to stand up to this lunacy. That is our message today. Scientists, citizens, taxpayers, armed with common sense, can say no to a dangerous boondoggle. We demand that the majority in Congress listen to the scientists, listen to the CBO, listen to the public. Be the servants of a people's democracy, not a vanity of an egomaniac. We must not fund the Golden Dome. Invest in arms control, not another arms race. Thank you.
I think the report that we're releasing makes it quite clear that there is no technical fix to the problem posed by nuclear weapons. The only real solution is to eliminate these weapons. And both Senator Markey and Congressman McGovern have introduced measures into the Congress, Senate Resolution 323 and House Resolution 317, which embody a fundamentally different approach to national security, one based on the principles they've just been talking about: the need to negotiate with the other countries that have nuclear weapons to eliminate these arsenals, and the need to take immediately certain steps that will lessen the danger of nuclear war today. And we are very grateful for the leadership they have shown in the Congress with these two measures. If people have questions for either Senator Markey, Congressman McGovern, or Laura or myself, we're happy to take them. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening. This program is copyrighted by Federal Network, Incorporated, and provided only for informational and educational purposes. Unauthorized reproduction, distribution, or use of this episode without expressed written permission from FedNet is prohibited.